Welcome, everyone, to the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council's 42nd annual meeting. Today, July 20th. I'm Bob Kingan, President of the Board of Directors. We have a very full and, I believe, entertaining program and meeting today. But we do need first to begin a business meeting. That's required by our bylaws and very specific things we need to do before we move ahead. The first item in our business meeting is to approve the minutes from the 2020 annual meeting. On the screen now are some housekeeping notes that you should pay attention to. But I will ask if there are any additions or corrections to the minutes from last year. You all should have had a chance to read them before the meeting. There being none, let me move that we approve the minutes as written from last year. You'll see on your screen that there is an opportunity to vote yes or no on accepting the minutes. And please complete that, and we'll wait a few seconds for the results. And 100%, all of us agreed to accept the minutes, and the record will reflect that. Thank you very much. The second order of business is to elect the directors, the board for this coming year. We have 3 individuals that are proposed for if you go back, there we go, proposed for a first term, to last 3 years. Mary Beth Kazansky, representing Elk Skeegamog Lakes Association, Donna Perla, at-large, Sheboygan County, and Claire Rasmussen, at-large, Charlevoix County. We also have continuing board members. I think we have a slide for that. And you'll see these 12 names. And we have 3 retiring board members, Larry Levingood, myself, and Linda Olkey. Let's first vote for the proposed members for first term, so I think we'll put the vote up. Here we go. And then also we have a slate of officers for the board, and they are Claire Rasmussen as president, Rick Dornberg as vice president, Bill Foster as secretary, and Rick Brandeis as treasurer. And here we're asking in the second question for only board of directors to vote. So if you would vote accordingly, please. And submit those.
We're only at 27% of individuals voting. So we're going to wait a few more seconds.
All right.
And I apologize to Mary Beth for spelling her last name wrong. And we have a hand raised by Frank Edwigashek, so I'm going to allow him to talk. So Frank, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm trying to submit on the poll and it won't let me submit.
I'm very sorry for that. Are other people experiencing the same problem? Yeah, okay. So apparently other people are.
Jennifer, it says that you have to vote for adjourning the meeting at the same time, otherwise it won't submit. So we can just adjourn the meeting and then pretend that we are continuing, or we'd have to change the actual vote box, I think.
Well, let's do that. Let's vote for adjourning the meeting.
All right, we're adjourning the meeting.
And everyone can go ahead and vote for the second one as well, even though it's only a board of directors vote. I apologize for the confusion.
I see, yes. If you vote yes for everything, we can submit it and move on. Or no.
That's better. Now we're getting up to 65% of the vote. Again, I do apologize for the confusion.
I wonder if some folks still can't. It seems like the chat room is, well, we'll see.
We're at 71%. Okay, we're at 72%. So I'm just going to go ahead and end the poll. Share the results. So you had 100% for accepting the slate of members for the first term, 95% on the officers. I'm sure the no's came because they weren't supposed to be voting, and all in favor of adjourning, 95%. And I'm sure those that voted no were because we're technically not adjourning yet. So thank you all. And again, I do apologize for the confusion.
Well, next year, hopefully, we'll all be in the same room together and we can work this out very easily. All right, I guess we can adjourn. I think we've covered all our business. Gail, anything that you want to add in this part of the business meeting before you do your executive report?
I don't think so. I will actually acknowledge the retiring board members and thank them as soon as I start in. That sound good?
Okay.
All right. So I'm getting, I love this Zoom stuff. We can't see Gail. Now we can. It's because I just turned on my video. All right. So how about now? Everybody have speaker view on and you can see me? Yes. All righty. So let's move forward with my thank you to the retiring board members, and the list is on there. Fabulous board members we are losing this year. I wanted to start with Bob Kingan, who is our president this year. He served on the board for 7 years, representing the Elk-Skegamog Lakes Association, and he served for president this past year. He served as vice president prior to that. He chaired the executive committee. He was on the ad hoc long-range planning committee. He served on the personnel committee, our DEIJ committee, and the board governance committee. So Bob served in so many ways for us, and really this past year was the perfect person to help us through the pandemic with his long career in public health. So thank you, Bob. Larry Levingood also served on the board for 6 years. He represented the Lake Charlevoix Association and brought with him his extensive knowledge about public health as well, particularly related to septic systems, and worked at the health department for many years. He also served on the executive committee almost that entire time. And then finally, Linda Elke served on the board. She did one term for us representing the Pickerel Crooked Lakes Committee, and she also served on the DEIJ committee for us. So thank you to those retiring board members. We will miss you all. And now I will proceed with a bit of an executive director report. It won't be extensive because here we are once again via Zoom. And as Bob said, next year we're going to be in person for sure. And this year probably could have been, but at the point we decided we were going to do the meeting virtually, there was not really an opportunity to be certain that we'd be able to do it safely in person. So here we are back on Zoom. So Jennifer, if you wanted to move to the financial highlights, I can go through those. So the 3 or 4 things that I'm going to talk about, one is our financial highlights. These are unaudited statements. Then I'm going to talk about membership a bit, and then a few programmatic highlights. And then finally, I'm going to introduce the staff. I have pictures of them, but I don't necessarily have the opportunity for each one of them to say a little bit to you. So, all right, so financial highlights. So as we are saying here, and it also will appear in your annual meeting, we are very careful with our funds. We know that it comes from people who expect us to be careful, and so we are. So we have revenue on your left side of the screen and expenses on the right. And this year, our total revenues, which included primarily contributions and grants, but also some contractual funds, support from our endowment, bequests that we received, and other or miscellaneous. So a total of $1,285,609. Those contributions, as you see the percentages there, 77% comes from contributions and grants. We are very much reliant on our membership, and the next membership slide will show you that as well. As far as our expenses go, over on the right-hand side, you'll see Watershed Protection receives 43% of our funds to do the work that they do. And Watershed Protection includes watershed management, planning and implementation, restoration actions, watershed monitoring, water quality monitoring, and research programming. So that is a large part of the programs of the organization. Policy and advocacy, our second team I want to mention, includes local, state, and federal policy work and advocacy on particular issues, very much a significant program area. Between those two, that is 61% of our programs. Outreach and education is 20%, and that includes school-aged education, but we also include many of our other outreach efforts, including social media, meetings like this, the newsletter, et cetera. So we consider outreach and education to be critical in terms of supporting the rest of the work of the organization and educating the public and our members. And then, of course, fundraising or development and management in general at 19%. We like to keep those under about 20%, but they are obviously essential for the organization. So that total our expenses, $1,253,501. So we had an excess of revenue of about $30,000 this year, which was great considering it was a pandemic year. So the next slide will explain a little bit more about our membership. So next, Jennifer, when you're ready, there we go. So 512,171 in 2020 in membership gifts. That was an increase over the year before that. And what we really were proud of was our membership and their concern basically over the organization through a pandemic year, and people really did step up and increase their gifts. We also received $453,000 in contributions toward our endowment funds, special projects, and bequests. Those are contributions we don't necessarily solicit. They are from people who care enough about the long-term sustainability of the organization that they're contributing through their trusts and wills, as well as toward particular endowment funds that fund certain activities. We had 208 new members for a total of 2,245 member individuals, families, organizations, and businesses. Our private contributions represent half of our total operating budget. So you can see we truly couldn't do it without our amazing members. We also rely on 5 endowment funds for both our current and long-term funding. The total market value of these funds as of December 31st 2020 was 2,784,322. And since this time has topped 3 million, which was our goal of a few years ago to get those endowment funds to 3 million. The reason we have 5 different endowment funds is that they are for particular topics in particular locations. And so we have funds at Fifth Third Trust Department, which the Watershed Council manages ourselves. Actually, Fifth Third manages, but we oversee ourselves. And then we have 3 funds at the Charlevoix County Community Foundation, one for our interns, the Mora Brandi Internship Fund, and that supports our internship programs. The second fund at the Charlevoix County Community Foundation is an education and monitoring fund that has been exclusively funded by the Taylor Foundation. That fund is nearing $1 million on its own. And then also we have a general water quality fund, or we call it the tip of the Mitt, Watershed Council Water Quality Fund at Charlevoix Community Foundation. We have 2 funds as well at the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation. One is our general fund, and the second that we have there is a land and water education fund, which is a joint endowment fund with the Little Traverse Conservancy. So those are our 5 endowment funds, and so people of interest in those topics contribute, as well as just an interest in contributing to our endowment fund in general. All right, so the next slide is just some snippets out of our annual report that are numeric. And so I thought I would just buzz through these quickly. We had 400 hours of staff time devoted just to Line 5 in the last year. We have 45 volunteers that protect our lakes and streams. We very much rely on them for the data that they collect. We received $417,866 in grants in 2020. We had 105 state and federal permit applications that we review. 300, I can't read that one. 370 hours working on local issues and ordinances, hoping my face doesn't cover that up for all of you. 30 miles of shoreline surveyed, 4,500 pounds of medications kept out of our water, and 2,245 generous members. So just a few little snippets for you from our annual report. The annual report will be arriving at your doorstep in the next couple of weeks, and it includes more details and stories about some of the work that we've been doing in 2020. All right, so now I want to introduce the staff. So there's me, Executive Director off on the left. This is my last annual meeting that I will be running. I will attend annual meetings as a volunteer member in the future, but after 37 years, this is my last annual meeting with you. Then we have Natalie Waltz, who's our office manager, Molly Voorhees, our business manager, both of whom have been with the organization, Molly a year and Natalie a couple of years now at this point in time. Then the next group of folks is the Education, Communications, and Development team. Debbie Esposito, our data and membership specialist, who's now been with us for several years. Jen DeMoss, Communications Director, who put together this meeting, also started right before COVID hit. Kate Schweikel, Communications Coordinator, who's been with the organization for several years as well. And Eli Baker, our Water Resources Education Coordinator. Eli runs the Watershed Academy and other middle school and school-age education programs. Watershed Protection Team, Jennifer Buchanan, Watershed Protection Director. Actually, she's the Associate Director. I missed that edit when I looked this over. Sorry, Jennifer. Jennifer's been with us now for about 16 years. Caroline Keeson, Monitoring Programs Coordinator, who's also really directing all of the interns and seasonal employees this year. And Lauren Dye, our Watershed Management Coordinator, our newest new staff who started with us just a couple of months ago, who's also working on watershed management. Policy team, Jennifer Mckay is our policy director. She put together this PowerPoint for us and works on the state and federal level significantly. And then Grenetta Thomassey, Watershed Policy Director, who is also retiring along with me. And we will have a little more to say about Grenetta as the meeting goes on. Then our summer staff and interns. We always have fabulous, wonderful interns and sometimes seasonal employees, and this year is no exception. Evan Jonason, who's a Watershed Protection Team intern, who has local connections here. It's been out in the field working on a variety of different things. Hannah Snyder works exclusively on our mobile program, our mobile boat washing station, and works every weekend day washing boats at a variety of different boat launches all across the region. And then Sophie Goodnow, who's also with the Watershed Protection Team, and she and Evan are a team out in the field doing a variety of different things, including reviews and surveys for road stream crossings, et cetera. So there we go. So that's the end of my executive director report. At this point in time, thank you very much for participating in that. We do have two other pieces for you, our celebration pieces, and I am going to kick off the first. So for those of you who know Grenetta Thomassey, she is our first honoree today. And so I'm going to get myself into speaker mode, but I do want to give you a little bit of my introduction to and thank you to Grenetta before we hear from some other people. So in the spring of 2005, Will Schweikel and I interviewed Grenetta to replace him as the policy director. And we were both struck with both her direct approach and her sense of humor and her quickness to smile and laugh. She brought those attributes to her 16 years at our organization. Because of her honesty and willing to discuss anything with anyone, she built allies in the most unlikely places and earned the respect of her adversaries in addition to those that agreed with her. To this day, she stays in touch with those she worked with on state committees, working on wetland law changes, the Great Lakes Water Compact, and with local communities and committees on a variety of issues. She is a passionate advocate and believes deeply in the work of the Watershed Council and protection of the environment across the board. For several years, she served as a sounding board for me and helped me assess many topics and issues facing the Watershed Council. She has brought so much to the work of the organization, and we will miss her greatly. So now I have a few people joining me in singing her praises and wishing her well in her retirement. And the first is James Clift. James is the deputy director with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. James previously served as the Michigan Environmental Council's policy director for 20 years. I'm out of here. It's all you, James.
Thank you very much, Gail. Appreciate it. And I'll just say that this is, a little sad for me. I've always enjoyed working with Grenetta and Tip of the Mitt in general. I think what I appreciated most about working with Grenetta is that, it was her dedication to simultaneously kind of applying like the latest science, but making sure that she was continuing kind of the further research to support new science at the same time. So the way she would bring in new students working on, their thesis here or their graduate work there, this whole idea that this area had to continue to evolve and we had to learn from what we were doing. That was something that I wasn't exposed to, I don't think, in a lot of our other groups, and really appreciated that commitment that Grenetta kind of brought to the table. Of course, I was always a little jealous, of her view from her workplace overlooking Lake Michigan, why someone decided to put the state capitol in Lansing about as far as you can get from a Great Lake, but I'll save those complaints for another time. I did want to share kind of a one anecdote with you, because this is what you do on fun times like this. And that's when in 2008, I was celebrating my 50th birthday and had really in 3 short years got to know Grenetta very well and our work together, but enticed her to join me on a little trip to Italy. And we had a little place overlooking Costa Brava in Italy, overlooking the Mediterranean. And we were having a wonderful time eating the local food, checking the local vineyards out. But the legislature was also still working on that regulation of water withdrawals, large water withdrawals in Michigan, probably the biggest piece of legislation that we worked on together. So every couple of days, we'd mosey down to the little village and to the little internet cafe, download the most recent versions of the legislative language that was being kind of negotiated. And we'd put our comments in and send an email back to Michigan on kind of what we thought was, should happen in the various parts. So even in the most relaxing of times, it was still that commitment to work and commitment to, protecting the natural resources. So I always kind of appreciated that dedication and served her well over the years. So I wish you the best in retirement, and thank you very much for having me share my thoughts.
Thank you, James. I really appreciate it. So Bob is next. I already introduced Bob, but I wanted to let you all know that he was visited and retired in Antrim County for over 50 years. And after a career at the CDC and in public health, he has quite a bit of experience, which, as I mentioned, guided us through the pandemic, but also has helped guide lake associations, particularly Elk-Skigamog Lake Association, for many years.
Thank you, Gail. I have the distinct privilege of representing lake associations and honoring Grenetta and her leadership to our associations. Each year, Grenetta has brought all the lake associations in the 4 counties served by the Watershed Council, brought us together, either Charlevoix or Petoskey, and provided us with speakers from state agencies and other resources. But most importantly, we had roundtable sessions where she led us through various discussions that led us to learn from one another, provide us with contacts with each other. And it was just very stimulating things that we experienced. And thank you for that, Grenetta. Also, Grenetta works with lake associations individually in terms of developing watershed plans. And also, speaking from Elk-Skigamog Lake Association, we're part of what is called the Watershed Plan Implementation Team, WIPIT. And it's a group that meets quarterly, all the lake associations together with other nonprofits and government agencies within the Elk River chain of lakes, which is, Grenetta brought, I think it was probably 2 years that she brought graduate students from the University of Michigan in to work in the Elk River chain of lakes, developing all kinds of data to provide the backbone for the watershed plan for our watershed. And it was a tremendous effort. Not only did our WIPIT team take on water quality issues, but also things like the lake associations working together to install 70 some fish shelters in our 5 lakes. 5 of our lakes. So she knows how to bring people together, how to lead people and get results. I think, to me, also I have served for a number of years on the Planning Commission in Milton Township. And I think one of the themes that Grenetta has provided to all of our lake associations and also with local governments is to bring us together to work together to further environmental concerns. And I think the milestone there was the development of the gaps analysis when Grenetta and her interns reviewed every zoning ordinance, every master plan, and every township in our 4 counties and developed really sound books for each county that detail the strengths and weaknesses and environmental aspects of the zoning ordinances. I know it led in our township to strengthening very much 3 or 4 different aspects. So I applaud her for stimulating that relationship between lake associations and government agencies. So Grenetta, thank you very much for your sincerity and your leadership to our lake associations.
Thank you, Bob. We have Jennifer Mckay next, who you all know is our policy director for the Watershed Council, and you are on.
Thank you, Gail. So as policy director, I had the distinct pleasure of working with Grenetta as the two of us made up the policy team at the Watershed Council for the last 16 years. Grenetta has been a fierce and unrelenting advocate for our waters from day one. She's never shy. She's never afraid to fight for the values of the Watershed Council. Her passion was undeniable, and you only needed to step into our office to recognize that passion and that zeal. You could hear Grenetta's voice from almost anywhere in our office. Or when we were working to save the state's wetland protection program, protect coastal wetlands from the devastating practice known as beach grooming, or trying to ensure that Michigan's waters were adequately protected from high volume hydraulic fracturing from fracturing drilling. You know, Grenetta and I made just a fantastic team together. We fell into perfect roles working together. She would come in hard, outlining everything that was wrong and why it was wrong. And then when she spoke, elected officials, regulators, stakeholders, everyone would listen, and they would listen carefully. And when she was done lambasting them, I would calmly step in with our solutions and legislative fixes. And again, it was a perfect team, one that saw great successes and many accomplishments over the years. In the end, it was Grenetta's commitment and contributions that have enriched our state, providing greater water resources protections, not only in Lansing, but throughout the Great Lakes Basin, and especially locally in our service area. And although Grenetta may be stepping away from the Watershed Council, I know she will always be some type of activist. It's in her DNA. When Grenetta started, she always commented that she had big shoes to fill in replacing Will Schweikel. And after 16 years, Grenetta, you are leaving some very big shoes to fill yourself. I wish you nothing but the best in your retirement, and we're welcome to have you assist us at any point in time. Best of luck.
Okay. So next we have Tammy Dornenberg. Tammy has been the planning and zoning director for Emmett County for the past 10 years and has lived in Emmett County her whole life. She's a wife, mom of 2 adult daughters, grandmother to 6, and loves to boat, swim, and is an outdoor enthusiast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Gail. I'm really honored to be a part of Grenetta's retirement celebration. I'm thankful for the tip of the Mitt Watershed Council for their work and the resources that they provide. I want to thank Grenetta Thomassey for her contributions to Emmett County, surrounding counties, and beyond, including the entire Great Lakes Basin. She brought a wealth of knowledge and shared information in an open communication style, which we really welcomed. She brought awareness to our watersheds and pointed out our gaps in protecting our natural resources. The gaps analysis, as was mentioned before, was a project Grenetta led in our communities, presenting those areas which were being left out of regulation by our local ordinances. She regularly organized the Little Traverse Bay and Burt Lake watershed protection meetings in our county. And during those meetings, presentations were common, highlighting best practices, local and regional activities, and specific projects that people were working on in our regions. This has become an essential communication option for our local governments, something that we look forward to each quarter. Here in Emmett County, Grenetta led the program to reduce the Phragmites invasion. She explained the program to our Board of Commissioners and has continued to assist the county each year in seeking the proper permits and the private property owners' permissions to treat invasive species. She has made the process on our end simple and seamless, and I'm happy to say that there are some success stories on the Phragmites front. Grenetta helped out the Planning and Zoning Office by reviewing development plans and proposals that were coming before us, such as the Windjammer on Crooked Lake and True North Golf Course near the Stutzmanville Bog north of Harbor Springs. She shared data and offered solutions in a way which encouraged collaboration. This included, among many others, the recent completion of the coastal sustainability assessment with suggestions for our boards to consider. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Tannery Creek flooding project, which, because of its proximity to McDonald's north of Petoskey, Grenetta refers to as the McFlooding Project. Grenetta has spent countless hours in organizing meetings, emailing, calling, and writing grants to try to correct the development which causes flooding of the Tannery Creek, only to not be able to submit those grants due to property owners' reluctance to authorize the grant submittal. We have not given up on that project, Grenetta, and I appreciate your willingness to continue to work on that with us. I wish Grenetta the best in her retirement and look forward to continuing to work alongside her on a few projects. Thank you, Grenetta, for your professionalism, your passion, and your friendship over the last 16 years. And thank you for the opportunity to share in this retirement celebration.
Thanks for being here, Tammy. And finally, we have Daniel Gonzalez. Daniel interned with Grenetta in the summer of 2018, has stayed in touch, and is currently pursuing a master's degree and career in environmental policy, another intern inspired by Grenetta.
Yeah, hi. When I interned with Grenetta, I had such an amazing pleasure of being able to support her on a number of projects, from social indicator surveys to working on septic systems. Grenetta always taught me was always such an incredible mentor. When we go to community meetings and we spend hours out of our day driving around the 4 counties of Michigan, she always wanted to convey how there's always the time to be patient, there's always the time to be fiery, there's always you always need to be persevering, you always need to be passionate. And I am just so thankful to have Grenetta as a mentor and everything she taught me. And I'm very thankful to be for all the work that she did up in northern Michigan. And I'm really excited to celebrate her, as she is a prime example of for a younger generation. All we want to be is just to be as passionate and as motivated and dedicated as Grenetta. And so we're very thankful for you.
Thank you, Daniel. Daniel represents one of many interns that would probably say a very similar tribute to Grenetta, because she really has been a mentor to many, many young people who stay in touch with her. All right, so those are the folks, Grenetta, that we have asked to speak and sing your praises. You have a minute or two if you want to say a few words to everybody as well, if you can talk after all of that. Look, she's not crying yet.
No, I've had my glasses off a few times. I just want to say thank you to our wonderful members, the boards of directors over the years, and the incredible staff I've had as colleagues here at the Watershed Council. I specifically want to call out Jen Buchanan, who has been a terrific partner on wonderful projects we've done together. Jennifer Mckay, who is an exceptional advocate who always makes me proud to work on anything with her. And Gail Gruenwald for hiring me, who is an outstanding boss, completely unflappable. And I count myself lucky to have worked for her, learned from her, and laughed with her for these past 16 years. I'm a lucky girl who got the job I trained for when I went to graduate school, and I'll be grateful to the Watershed Council for the rest of my life. My love to you all, and thank you.
All right, so I'm flapped as opposed to unflappable. Thank you, Grenetta, for everything. One good thing about Zoom, it occurred to me as we were doing this, is we wouldn't have been able to get all those people together to really pay tribute to Grenetta. So as I'm looking at the list of panelists with a little bit of dread as to what I know is coming next, I also appreciate the fact that everybody has taken time out of their day to come to this and also to be able to participate, because people are far flung and nowhere near Petoskey. So thank you so much, Grenetta, for everything. You and I will be in close touch, I know, as the days go on. And before I send it back to Bob, I wanted to comment on one chat that came in during our business meeting about getting more women on the board. And believe me, we have tried and continue to try and will continue to work on that. And this year, actually, with 3 new women coming onto the board, that's how we've been able to address the issue and will continue to do so. So thank you for the comment. So now I'm going to send it back. Art Gold, you're on video if you want to unvideo yourself, although I love seeing you. So now I'm going to send it back to Bob, who is going to start the next process.
Thank you, Gail. Yes, we're going to begin a second celebration, and I'd like to introduce the MC of this activity. His name is David Krauss. David is a multiple Emmy Award winner in television and film production, and he's based in Petoskey. He and his wife, Teresa, have been supporters of the Watershed Council for over 30 years. David served 2 terms on the board of directors and also as president of the board. He and Teresa have helped fund a number of initiatives at the Watershed Council over these years. So David, I pass this on to you, and look forward to the next section of this program.
Thank you, Bob. Well, it's great to be among all these pillars at Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. I have to laugh listening to the accolades for Grenetta. I've often thought that actually she had motivated me one time to almost buy a Harley Davidson motorcycle when I never really wanted a motorcycle. I think we were planning a road trip, but I've often thought if I'm going into battle, Grenetta is by my side, because not only will we win the battle, but afterwards, she's going to find a bar close that we're going to be able to have a real nice toddy after surviving whatever we were surviving. Well, congratulations to all. And we're here actually, Gail, prepare yourself to celebrate your career. As the saying goes, a lot of water has passed under that bridge since 1984. You are, I think, almost 37 years. But I would say about that water under that bridge, it's cleaner, the riverbanks are healthier, and some of those bridges actually have been replaced. I first met Gail in 1988, thanks to Mark Paddock, who probably introduced so many people to the Watershed Council. I had been a longtime member, and I wasn't going to mention it, but I will, of the World Wildlife Fund. And at a level that I was having meetings with the president and would go to great soirees in Washington, D.C., elegant events. And one day I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and on the cover, they had a story on not-for-profit organizations. And where does your money go? Well, it was interesting because WWF was one of those that was listed. And this has to do with investment, value of the dollar that you give. And 50% of their money actually went to the mission of the organization. 50% went to overhead. Well, that caught my attention. Actually, I was shocked. I left the organization, and thanks to Mark, was introduced to Gail. We met in the summer of 1988, and the very first question I asked her was, how much of the money that comes into the organization goes to overhead? And Gail chuckled. She smiled, and she said, well, 90% actually goes into the mission of the organization, into the programming, into the field. The other 10% is primarily overhead. I was in, completely sold, and have been ever since. I learned a lot through the years of leadership, her leadership specifically. That, you know, the sign of a strong leader and a gifted leader is making the organization better, healthier, stronger, and letting others take the credit. And Gail has really done all of that. So today we're going to hear testimonials about Gail's leadership style, who she is as a person, and how she has led this organization, again, for a remarkable 37 years. Gail, rest assured, this is not a roast. I don't think so. We've assembled a group of individuals who have all made an impact at the Watershed Council, and each will provide their unique perspective into your remarkable tenure as executive director. However, it's important to note that there are many other people on this Zoom who have also contributed in many ways to the Watershed Council, if not more than those that are going to be featured this morning. I can only imagine, Gail, your eyes are rolling right now. You're going to be going, please, can we get this over with? Well, she's right. Gail is not about personal accolades. She's about team leadership, seeking solutions and results. And I'll end before I move into those that are going to be speaking, that there are going to be individuals here that are not with us today who should be noted as well. They also provided important ballast, as it was in the formation of the Watershed Council. Mark Paddock, for his many, many skills, including recruitment, I'm one of them. Ruth Ogawa, who knew how a nonprofit should work. Horace Huffy Huffman, who not only wrote a check, but also rolled up his sleeves and, most importantly, mentored Gail. And so now, Gail, sit back, enjoy a lot of loving on you. So let's start with two individuals that you don't often get to say that they were there at the beginning, Art Gold and Linda Greer. Art is a professor of watershed hydrology at the University of Rhode Island. Art and Linda were part of a group of students recruited, again, by Mark Paddock at Michigan's Biological Research Station on Douglas Lake to help jumpstart Tip of the Mitt. Linda Greer is an environmental scientist and an advocate who worked for nearly 3 decades at the highest level, the National or Natural Resource Defense Council. Her interest in environmental protection began at the bug camp. Several years ago, Linda returned to the Biological Research Station as interim director. And I believe it's safe to say Linda is one of Gail's heroes in terms of the work she has done in keeping toxins out of the water around the world. Take it on.
Okay, thanks so much, David. I want everybody to know that I'm delighted to be part of the celebration. And bear with me, I have a long-term, but I'll keep it brief, perspective that I want to share. So when we think about Tip of the Mitt, when it got started, it was quite a small organization. So Gail had a challenge. She had to demonstrate the value of this organization to a group of very engaged lake and shoreline associations who cared a lot about their local place. So Tip of the Mitt, it was created as a consortium. So that meant that Gail had to master the delicate task of both empowering local organizations and also making sure that funding agencies, potential donors, and organizational members understood the value of Tip of the Mitt. So basically, she had to keep both hands moving all the time. She also needed to strategically pick issues that mattered the most to the organization and were best suited to help it grow. What impressed me was right away, Gail found a group of experts to work with Tip of the Mitt, and she began to generate programs that would improve stewardship at the local level. And so that meant that local organizations could see something tangible. So there were science-based programs quickly on water monitoring. She brought in people like our friend Doug Fuller. So there were shoreline surveys going on that were identifying and guiding problems, as well as restoration for local erosion, pollution hotspots. People began to see the value of Tip of the Mitt. She also began to expand the scope of Tip of the Mitt. In a perfect world, remember I'm a watershed scientist, I'd like to see government boundaries on watershed boundaries, but that's not reality. So that means that we have to cross watersheds, and we need legal and policy expertise, and we often have to deal with issues at the county level, township level, regional level, and those issues confront more than one watershed. She became an expert at dealing with that. And underneath keeping an organization going for 40 years, it's relentless, the need for resources. And Gail mastered fundraising. David just mentioned that. Grant writing. I remember Gail mentioning to me how important Huffy was to teaching her how to work with fundraising. And she began to build Tip of the Mitt into a very muscular organization. It's now among the top watershed groups in the country. So I've had a long career. I've been fortunate to work internationally as well as nationally. And over the years, I've worked with many different watershed organizations from Fiji and Thailand and Africa, as well as all over the United States. And when people were looking for examples of how could a local group work with stewardship, over and over again, I pointed to Gail and Tip of the Mitt. I even brought Gail out to Rhode Island as a keynote speaker for a workshop, and she engaged with lots of our watershed councils. At that point, most of them had part-time staff, limited budgets, and they were convinced that everything about their organization was unique and what could they possibly have in common with the watershed group that was 4 miles away. And Gail explained to them the value of regional cooperation. A number of years later, the Rhode Island Rivers Council was formed, and it's still thriving today. So I am in awe of her progress, of the prowess of Tip of the Mitt, and I give enormous credit to Gail and her leadership because she has really made a dream come true. So with that, I'll pass it on to my good friend, Linda Greer.
Thanks, Art. Thanks so much. And I thought what I would do is sort of take a look behind the curtain of to help people understand really what it took for this very amazing success that Art recounted. Count me in as in the long list of people who too have just been in awe of what Gail has been able to accomplish, all in a rural area of the state of Michigan that shrinks to very, very low population levels for 8 months of the year, you know, outside of the summer. So making it all that more remarkable, how much she's been able to accomplish. And, you know, in a nutshell, what this took was a leader that had it all. She had such great, good strategic sense in selecting the issues that mattered both to people and the environment, the sweet spot of the issues that would really work. She had such a strong capacity to understand and follow the sometimes very complicated science, showing the way forward. She had the legal and policy background to get the subtleties in the law that sometimes create opportunities, but also sometimes create enormous obstacles. And last but certainly not least, instincts for communicating and outreaching to ordinary people who simply love the region as much as she did. So all of this on top of the financial and management chops that Art just mentioned to fundraise, hire great people like Grenetta, and run the store. It's seldom that you find somebody that has all of these qualities put together, and that having it all is really what helped Tip of the Mitt to sing the way that it did. But not insignificantly, it also took a person who was willing and able to grow over the years, not get comfortable with the exact role that Tip of the Mitt was playing, but always look ahead and fill bigger and bigger shoes for the organization as a regional, as a statewide, and ultimately even a nationwide force. And here, of course, I'm thinking about the pipeline as these issues came to Tip of the Mitt attention for advocacy. So, you know, Art has seen more than his fair share of local watershed councils and is here to tell you how tall Gail stands in that community of watershed societies and activists really around the world. You know, for my part, I've seen more than my fair share of very complicated and highly controversial national environmental issues and how they play out. And I testify to you today that the work that Gail and her team has done, not just on local controversies, but also on the pipeline, is absolutely second to none across the various national issues that I have seen. So a hearty bravo on this work, which constitutes the advanced class of advocacy in so many ways. and is emblematic of the sophistication of the work the Tip of the Mitt has undertaken over all these years. So in closing, we are living in very complicated times at the moment, and our institutions are struggling mightily to deliver even basic progress on so many issues, including environmental protection, as well as other matters. And Gail's amazing career of accomplishments with Tip of the Mitt reminds us of the tremendous power of one individual to make a difference, creating the change that we all want to see. The whole mitten is going to miss you, Gail, not just the tip. And I will, and so many of your fans will around the country as well. Good luck with everything you do and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Art, as well. We're going to bring in next, I refer to him as a mythical figure, Doug Fuller. Gosh, where do you begin? When I joined the board, Doug had just left, and we would have a board meeting, and Gail would refer to him as if he was still in the room. And I would frequently look behind me to make sure that he wasn't there, but his shadow was, and it was a long one. Doug enjoyed working with Gail at the Watershed Council from 1987 to 2004, where he did a variety of tasks, including water quality monitoring, wetland delineation, groundwater studies, shoreline erosion control, septic system evaluation, and educational programs. And all the while learning how not to submerge his pickup truck, his boat trailer, his boat, and himself in Little Traverse Bay. That's a story perhaps for another time. So Doug, you're on.
Thank you. Can you see me? Okay, there I am. Well, thank you, David. That definitely is a story for another time. I worked at the U of M biostation in the late 1970s. At the same time, Art and Linda were involved in their outreach project that resulted in what is now Tip of the Mitt. My work then mostly involved looking through a microscope at rotifers, and I was only an interested bystander at that time. It wasn't until 1979, when I was doing water resource work at a regional planning agency in Traverse City, that I first became involved with the fledgling Watershed Council. I first met Gail during a phone conversation in 1984. It was just after she was hired, as I recall, the office manager and wetland specialist at the Watershed Council. I was moving from an old mobile home on 30 remote acres I owned next to Stutzmansville Bog. And the Watershed Council's director at the time, Carol Mckay, knew that Gail was looking for a place to live, having just moved to the area, and suggested she might like to rent my place. Well, it seemed to me like it would be a perfect spot for a wetland specialist next to one of the best bog wetlands in the area. But I think Gail was looking for something perhaps a bit nicer and more on the beaten path. Anyway, she called me up and she thanked me very graciously for the opportunity to rent my place. But having gotten to know Gail well over the subsequent years, I'm sure she didn't say what she was really thinking, which was probably something like, "I'm not living in that pit in the middle of nowhere." Is that possibly true, Gail? Anyway, Gail, being on a progressive community activist, soon got on the board of a local nonprofit where my wife Martha was also a board member. I still hadn't met Gail in person, but I kept hearing Martha say she really liked Gail and was very impressed by her. Well, eventually I saw for myself that Martha was right, and eventually we all became friends and we'd do things together like kayaking, camping, and cross-country skiing. Does anybody out there remember the commonly seen bumper stickers from the 80s that read "My land, not wetland"? Anybody that's been around long enough probably does. Wetlands and wetland protection laws were perhaps a little bit more controversial topic then than now, although certainly still is a controversy. Anyway, as such, Gail made wetland protection a big focus of the Watershed Council. She had secured a grant to conduct an inventory of riparian wetlands throughout the Watershed Council's service area, which back in those days was only the watersheds of 3 counties. And she was in need of more staff to work on that project. I was ready for a job change and was really interested in the position. Carol and Gail jointly interviewed me in late winter of 1987. And let me tell you, it was a very intensive grilling, but somehow I survived and I was hired. I recall my first day on the job was April 1st, 1987. And between the time I interviewed and then, Carol had left the Watershed Council and the board had hired Gail to be the executive director. On that first day, Gail and I drove to Boyne City to meet with the county extension agent down there to discuss the work. And I vividly recall how Gail had so many great ideas on how to tackle that big project. But Gail really always had great ideas and provided excellent guidance to the staff. But at the same time, she always allowed a lot of autonomy for us to approach our work in a way that best suited our skills and personality. We were encouraged to attend conferences and continuing education programs, and all that was much appreciated and I think very beneficial. Securing grant funding was, and I know still is, super critical to the success of the Watershed Council. Gail is so good at that. In my opinion, it's the most important, but probably the least glamorous or fun part of nonprofit work. I'm so appreciative that Gail took a lead role in that and kept us all out of the unemployment line. Gail, I wonder how many successful grants you've written over the years. Have you kept track? It must be in the hundreds. Thanks in large part to Gail's leadership, I think that the staff was particularly close during my 17 years at the Watershed Council. We periodically had staff bonding, outings, and even overnight retreats. Many of our outings were to different parts of our service area to, in part, get to better know the water resources we were charged with protecting. I remember one outing being in the Watershed Council's 15-foot Starcraft runabout, which was a very different vessel from the deluxe Boston Whaler that you guys have today. We were on Torch Lake. By then, the Watershed Council's service area had expanded to Antrim County, thanks to Gail's efforts. We all jumped overboard in 300 feet of water to really get up close and personal with the beautiful blue torch. Another time, we went down the Black and Sheboygan rivers in that same old boat. On that outing, we were stopped by the sheriff because the boat appeared to be overloaded. Luckily, we got off with just a warning, but it was a close call and it could have been some pretty bad publicity for Gail and the Watershed Council. Gail is very wise. We had weekly staff meetings where everyone gave project updates and discussed or sometimes even bickered about issues and problems. At the time, it seemed to me like way too many staff meetings, but now I see how valuable they were. I was always impressed by Gail's ability to patiently listen to all sides of a discussion, recap what she had heard, and offer her thoughts on the best course of action. And then it was usually like, oh yeah, of course, that's the approach we should take. I have so many fond memories of my years at the Watershed Council. I still get out on the area's lakes, streams, and wetlands quite a bit. I often happen upon some location where I did a wetland delineation or a shoreline erosion control project or some issue-related site visit. And it gives me great pride to see that more often than not, those sites are still in good shape and that I was a part of a team that was some way responsible. Back in my day, we of course celebrated Bosses Day above all other holidays at the Watershed Council. In the late 80s, I remember writing on Gail's Bosses Day card, "You're a gem of a boss." Gem was spelled capital G, capital E, capital M, which stood for Groundwater Education in Michigan, one of the many big grants that Gail successfully authored. I thought it was kind of a clever wordplay, but of course true, and I know it still rings true today. Gail really completed the transition from what was basically a struggling group of fishermen to the secure, effective, famous organization that it is today. So thank you, Gail, for hiring me, for building and running a successful organization, and for protecting our water resources. I really hope you enjoy your well-deserved retirement, and I look forward to more fun outings on our local waters with you in the future.
Thank you, Doug. Terrific. Gail, I hope you're still comfortable. You're not squirming too much. The next person
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine.
The next person I'm going to introduce, I got bios from almost everybody, and I tried to do as much background research as I could. But this particular bio that came in, I thought, I think I'm just going to read it as is because it so sums up Ham Shermer, and Ham, I'm sure you won't mind. So I will read it as he wrote it. It says, I've been a member of the Watershed Council for seemingly forever. Gail surprised me at a meeting some years ago with an award because I was the longest standing member present, period. I think you still are. I have funded a number of activities there over the years, including the communication system they use in their meetings now. I like to harass Walloon Lake residents, namely David Krauss, because they characteristically have such lousy green belts. I am Gail's husband's bespoke grouse and woodcock guide, along with some other guy. That would be me. I am cuter than a button and live on a fantastic lake, Burt Lake. So Ham, I hope I did it justice. You wrote the darn thing. So Ham, you are on.
Well, thank you, David. I think I'm not, let's see, am I speaker? Yeah, I am speaker. You can see me, I presume. I have had great fortune in my life because for some unknown reason over my years, I've had the privilege of being involved with a number of intriguing, talented, and interesting people, some of whom you're seeing today. People I admire, who I've worked for, who have worked for me, and who I enjoy working and playing with. People who have substance, who enjoy the world around them, who bring joy to those with whom they spend time. My time spent with these people, whether frequent or infrequent, is what brings fullness to my life. In that pantheon, I regard a few as superheroes, and one of those is who we are celebrating today. As David mentioned, I was once given an award by Gail at a Tip of the Mid annual meeting for my years of membership, and that caused me to reflect on how long I've known her. Over those years, she has successfully extracted coin from my pocket to pursue her good works, and even time from my days to serve on her board. She's been so successful in those endeavors that I hardly realized how completely she was taking advantage of me. And I was even flattered that she was taking her time to do so. Gail is my superhero because she is a lady of enormous grace and significant dedication to a cause. She can be tougher than nails and gentle as a lamb. There's an inherent kindness to Gail that sort of envelops you when you spend time with her. Those aspects of who she is have been manifested in the organization that she has led over these many years, and the contribution that our organization has made to the environment here in Northern Michigan. Few among us have the privilege of leaving such an enormous legacy when we reach that wonderful threshold that we call retirement. I'm sometimes asked by young people how I define success. I have that same answer each time because I've given a lot of thought to it. Success, in my view, is being able to honestly claim that you have made a positive difference because you were there. Whether it be small or large, things are better because you were there. By my measure then, today, we are celebrating an enormously successful individual. And I might add that her life's companion is a remarkably good wing shot. That's it.
Thank you, Ham. Appreciate that. And I love your background as well. It is summertime though, Ham, and it's kind of looking fallish. You're ready for the grouse season, so we're pretty excited. So, and you can turn your video off now. God bless you. Jen Buchanan. I have known Jen for a number of years. She is so versatile. How versatile? Let's see. She's a fundraiser, directs the work of the Watershed Protection Team, managing many of the Watershed Council's important water quality protection projects. She has a background in forest ecology, specializes in shoreline and stream bank restoration efforts, green stormwater infrastructure initiatives, and watershed protection outreach and education effort. Oh, yes, and Jen has a master's of landscape architecture as well. Those that work with her, me included, say she is a rock, is calm, steady, reliable, and always there. She also has a video tribute for Gail as well. So Jen, you are now on.
Thank you, David, very much. Before I go into our video, I want to just share a few words about Gail. So first of all, just the notion of Gail not being around to answer my weekly allotment of questions is kind of terrifying. But I, along with other staff, pledge to listen to our little inner voices that say, what would Gail do? For my 17 plus years with the Watershed Council, I have worked hard at honing this mantra, but let me tell you, it is easier said than done. Gail has a sensibility and resolve that is remarkable. She is always cool, calm, collected, and confident. When the figurative waters get rough and rocky, she not only remains afloat, but manages to keep under sail and effortlessly finds her way to safe harbor, unscathed and yet more equipped for the next storm. How does she do it? Perhaps after 37 plus years at the Watershed Council, she's learned a thing or two. Maybe she's just built that way. Regardless of how she's come to be the captain of our organizational ship, her absence will leave a void of great magnitude. But as she has said many times, her departure will not leave a void so big it cannot be filled. For Gail has carefully and continually constructed a solid foundation for this organization, worked to build the strengths of our staff, and cultivated meaningful partnerships every step of the way so that the work can and will continue for decades to come. Gail, on behalf of the staff, thank you for investing so much of your time and talents in the Watershed Council. You leave behind some very big shoes to fill, but we will step by step do our best to fill them as we remind ourselves to consider in both smooth and rocky seas, what would Gail do? Now I am going to transition here to a little PowerPoint. Pardon me. So now, a little walk down memory lane. We feature a few of many of Gail's career, or we feature just a few of Gail's many career highlights. To give a sense of when these accomplishments took place, we have paired them with some events you may recall. So Gail Gruenwald, remember when? Between the years 1984 and 1987, Gail joined the Watershed Council after passing the bar exam, and her legacy with the organization began as staff environmental attorney. Gail also became the Watershed Council's first full-time executive director and wrote and published the first edition of Michigan Wetlands, Yours to Protect, A Citizen's Guide to Wetland Protection. Meanwhile, the movies Gremlins and Ghostbusters were released. It was also the year we learned that doves cry. Tetris, my personal favorite game, was launched. The movie Dirty Dancing was an unexpected hit. Aretha Franklin was the first female inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And cell phones cost 50 cents per minute. 1989 and through 1990, Gail started the Endowment Fund. She also worked to protect wetlands through the formation of the Great Lakes Wetlands Policy Consortium, a binational group of environmental and conservation organizations, which was instrumental in developing policy recommendations to increase wetland protection at all levels of government in the United States and Canada. Meanwhile, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar retired after 20 years. The first Batman movie was released. Microsoft released the Office Suite package. Tim Berners-Lee published a proposal for a little something called the World Wide Web. NASA launched the Hubble Space Station, and the world witnessed the demolition of the Berlin Wall. 91 to 93, Gail testified before Congress to support a strong federal wetlands program. She also accepted the White Pine Award from the Michigan Senate Republican Caucus for outstanding achievement in watershed protection and education. Meanwhile, the first X-Files episode aired. Beanie Babies became all the rage, and Cheers aired its series finale. In 95, under Gail's leadership, Experience Lake Charlevoix, the school-aged education program was created. And meanwhile, Toy Story was the first completely computer-generated film was released. Brad Pitt gained the title of Sexiest Man Alive in People magazine for the first time. And Jerry Garcia, the guitarist for the Grateful Dead, passed away. 1997 through 99, Gail facilitated the Mullet Lake Watershed Project to correct erosion sites along the Pigeon River and secured support for the Pickerel Crooked Lakes Watershed Project for watershed cleanup and restoration. Gail increased our membership from approximately 400 to over 2,000, and we all celebrated the Watershed Council's 20th anniversary. Meanwhile, scientists in Edinburgh successfully cloned Dolly the sheep. The first Harry Potter book debuts in the UK. Mike Tyson bit off part of Evander Holyfield's ear. For the first time in the United States, Viagra was approved to be sold commonly. The world's biggest search engine, Google, was formed. And the Apple launches the iMac. 2001 to 2002, Gail successfully obtained our organization's home, the Freshwater Center on Bay Street in Petoskey. Gail achieves an operating budget exceeding $1 million, and the Watershed Council appears in National Geographic magazine. Meanwhile, Wikipedia became the source for all information. iTunes was released by Apple. Shrek debuts. And American Idol first aired on TV. 2005, with Gail at the helm, the Watershed Council initiated the volunteer stream monitoring program. Meanwhile, Tom Cruise jumped on Oprah's couch over his love for Katie Holmes. YouTube was founded. And the Kyoto Protocol to cut global emissions of greenhouse gases comes into effect. 2010 to 2012, Gail was instrumental in the establishment of the Little Traverse Bay Protection and Restoration Fund to enhance, restore, and protect the waters of Little Traverse Bay for current and future generations. Through Gail's leadership, Watershed Council staff developed and expanded the prescription and over-the-counter drug disposal program in northern Michigan. More than 3,100 pounds of unwanted and unused medications were collected. Meanwhile, Lady Gaga showed up to the 2010 Video Music Awards in a dress made entirely out of raw meat. And Instagram was born. Between 2015 and 2018, Gail helped to create the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Academy program that has grown and continues to educate students in our service area about the importance of water quality. Gail helped to coordinate the Michigan Swimmers Itch Partnership to provide technical and financial assistance to lake associations trying to reduce swimmer's itch on their lakes. Meanwhile, Hamilton hits Broadway. The NFL's Deflategate was a thing. Thailand's Navy SEALs rescued a boys' soccer team trapped in a cave for 18 days. Avengers Infinity War brought every Marvel comic book character together. And finally, red hair emojis were released. 2019, Gail supported efforts to pursue alternatives to the Lake Street Dam while we all celebrated the Watershed Council's 40th anniversary. Meanwhile, Greta Thunberg attends the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. Baby Yoda made his debut on Disney. And oat milk became a huge trend. Lastly, 2020, Gail guided the Watershed Council through an incredibly challenging pandemic year while maintaining the programs that protect Northern Michigan's waters. Meanwhile, Zoom, and more Zoom, and here we are Zooming again. Zoom was the way we conducted work meetings, caught up with friends, and the only way we saw some of our favorite faces for months. So once again, Gail, thank you for everything that you have done for the Watershed Council, for me, and for our freshwater resources. Thank you.
Oh, Jen, thank you. That was definitely a walk down memory lane. I saw one of the last slides was a picture of a meeting in Lindy Buffington's office. And so we honor her life as well. She was such a presence for so many years, and her untimely death this past year was very, very difficult, no more so than for her beloved husband, Gary. So now we move, we're making progress here. We're closing in here, Gail. So you can, if you need to do a bathroom break, you could do it, but not yet, so soon. Claire Rasmussen is a past board member as well as a long time Watershed Council volunteer. Most importantly, she brings her corporate expertise to the Watershed Council for the years that she was at Dow. That includes global leadership positions, environmental health and safety risk management. The good news is Claire is coming back on the board this year. She'll now share her perspective of being a science retiree to a Watershed Council volunteer.
Thank you very much, Dave, and hello to everyone. I'm excited to have been asked to describe my journey coming as a fresh retiree and perspective, starting out in volunteer roles and eventually evolving into some board positions. My first touch point with the Watershed Council was in 2009 when I listened to a presentation by Grenetta on the Great Lakes Compact and the water withdrawal tool. And I was so impressed with the council. I said, this is the place for me. It's a science-based organization. I think I can fit in and enjoy some time with this group. Well, that led to working with Grenetta for the first several years. After that time, working on water-related ordinance reviews in Charlevoix and Antrim counties that resulted in the gaps analysis work. Was the scribe for the Lake Charlevoix and Little Traverse Bay watershed management plans, but listening to all of those perspectives was very helpful and educational to know how the Watershed Council really has an impact. As this led to some additional interactions with Gail that it continued to evolve. And what I learned from both Grenetta and Gail was the intense value of the partnerships with community leaders, township officials, lake associations, and other interested protection organizations in the region. And more importantly, the approaches to advocacy at this level. So this then led to my interest and to have been asked to be in the first round on the board in 2014. And what I immediately observed in working with Gail is her amazing ability to remain fully engaged in evolving nonprofit organization normal operations as they changed in time, be a leader in the region, and still could manage constructive relationships with organizations that may have overlapping or similar missions. Her approaches to cultivating donor relationships were extremely effective and still are to this day. And one thing we will be looking for in our future leadership in the organization. And I always observe that she's very committed to education that comes through at all the levels, community, the youth, in all regard to water protection measures. And it's been fun to watch the organization evolve now with the Watershed Academy over the last several years. Gail has a very analytical approach. She's analytically minded. She's very science focused, handles the budget, very practical, certainly a star in her legal topics. But yet I can tell you she's a very and truly warm and caring staff leader. Then we had many a conversation where we discussed how to do what's best for a staff member that may be in need or need a little different approach given their circumstance. I'll close with saying that I am delighted, absolutely delighted to consider Gail not only a colleague, but a good friend, and I look forward to many future interactions with you, Gail. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. So we move on to David DJ Jones, who's executive director of the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation. He's had the pleasure of collaborating with Gail for almost 20, or actually over 21 years. And the Community Foundation has played a major role as a partner, collaborator, and resource to many since 1992. But they've supported the Watershed Council for decades. One of the most visible efforts, certainly, of the Community Foundation was taking a lead in the funding of the Little Traverse Bay Protection and Restoration Fund. DJ was a big part of a remarkable breakfast in the summer of 2011. I was co-chair of that breakfast along with Steve Kircher, CEO of Boyne Resorts, at a kickoff breakfast to basically introduce to the community the first ever fund of this type on the Great Lakes. Gail and the Watershed Council, as you saw previously, took the lead on the Protection Fund initiative along with others, including the Community Foundation. But at that breakfast alone, $100,000 was raised here in Petoskey that contributed to what turned out to be a remarkably successful campaign, thanks to the matching gift from CMS Land Company as well. DJ is a gifted executive director, and he will share his thoughts on Gail's willingness and ability to collaborate.
Thank you so much, David. And hello, Gail. Good afternoon, everyone. What an honor to be a part of this celebration for you, Gail. You know I'm a people person, so it kills me not to be able to give you a hug right now, but we'll do that later. But I want to take just a moment, first of all, to start out on behalf of the staff and the board and other volunteers of the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation. Gail, just a huge thank you and congratulations to you on your retirement and your 37 years of leadership at the Watershed Council. It's a vital organization to our community, and it is in great shape today, and our waters are in pretty darn good shape as well, thanks to you. So on behalf of all of us here, first of all, thank you so much and congratulations. I look forward to seeing you out and about in the community in your retirement, but thank you for your leadership. As David indicated, I wanted to highlight a leadership quality that I think Gail has quite a bit of, which is collaboration and selfless collaboration. So as David indicated, I've been here 21 years and had the pleasure of working with Gail on all sorts of various projects and programs. And she really almost always wants to bring the best people and best organizations to the table for the common good. And as I said, selfless collaboration. So I could mention several examples, but I won't. I want to highlight one that David, you referenced, and Jen, you mentioned as well. It's the Little Traverse Bay Protection and Restoration Fund here at our Community Foundation. And Gail, it's important that you know, and everyone in the meeting here knows just what a legacy that is for you. It may not have your name on it, but I assure you, your fingerprints are all over it, and rightly so. It will be a permanent legacy for you, despite not having your name on it. But we will certainly think of you every time we make a grant out of it. We'll recall back to 2010, the environmental cleanup work is going on in Bay Harbor with CMS Land, the tribe, and the Watershed Council and others. And they're looking for a way to somehow leave a legacy and permanently continue to support and protect this gem of a water we have out here in Little Traverse Bay and its watershed. And what does Gail do but say, listen, folks, the best thing to do is to go to the Community Foundation and create an endowment fund that can permanently support work around Little Traverse Bay. And again, a selfless act for the better. So kudos to CMS Land, of course. We worked with Tim Petrosky and Dave Mingabeer and the tribe and Gail to pull this all together. But CMS Land offered a $250,000 gift if we would go out and raise another $250,000. And if we did that, then they would offer a second $250,000 gift. So a generous match and a real motivator for sure. But again, Gail stepped up to the plate, helped with the fundraising. As David indicated, we had a lot of breakfasts and coffee events to get the word out. We hit the goal and received the second distribution and gift from CMS Land, $500,000 investment from them. We raised, as I said, over $250,000. Gail, you should know, and others should know, I know it's not about the numbers, but a lot of great things have happened from that fund already in the short 10 years it's been up and running. It's now a $1.1 million endowment fund, again, for Little Traverse Bay, which is just mind-boggling to me. We've now done 23 grants out of the fund, a little over $370,000 in grants out the door, protecting in the Little Traverse Bay. And as I mentioned, certainly the Watershed Council, we use your watershed plan as a guide, and the Watershed Council has been a recipient of those grants, but not the only recipient. And again, Gail, a legacy to your selfless act to get it going, that others are benefiting from it and will for generations to come. It is a wonderful legacy for us and for our community. And I thank you for your leadership in getting it going. And I just, again, want to wish you well on your retirement. It's not the end, it's just the beginning. And I really, really look forward to continuing our friendship. And we, as we say, we will see you around. Thank you so much, Gail.
Thank you, DJ, as well. We're in the Community Foundation mode right now, and I'm going to move on to Chip Hanson, who serves as president of the Charlevoix County Community Foundation for the past 11 years. What you may not know about him is that this is his second career. He retired as a very successful public school superintendent in East Jordan. Then he took over for Bob Tabellini at the Charlevoix Community Foundation. It was always a moment in our board meetings when either he or Maureen Radke would deliver a check during our board meetings. It was like sprinkling gold dust. It was always great fun. As a friend said, Chip, he is truly a man of service. Chip, you are on.
Hey, thank you so much, David. And like DJ, I'd certainly like to thank Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council for giving me the opportunity to be part of this program honoring Gail's service today. The Charlevoix County Community Foundation has had the privilege of working alongside Gail and Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council for all of our 29 years. And there are a few nonprofit partners that we hold in such high regard. Tip of the Mitt is a solid organization, great board members, great volunteers, great staff, a great and loyal group of supporters, a great mission properly executed, and especially great leadership. Because of all of these things, our community foundation has recognized that Tip of the Mitt advances programs and projects and initiatives that are worthy of investment. And earlier in the program, Doug Fuller, I think, asked rhetorically, how many grants have you written, Gail, that have been successful? Well, I can tell you just at the Charlevoix County Community Foundation, that number is more than 120 grants, totaling nearly $350,000 over the years. And if that's not enough, we'd have to say that organizations that invest in their local community foundations are pretty forward thinking. They're not just concerned about today or the day-to-day aspect of their operations. They're concerned about tomorrow and the future. And Tip of the Mitt is in that category here. They haven't established just one fund at our community foundation, but three, with assets totaling more than $1 million and providing annual support for Tip of the Mitt's educational and internship programs and for the organization's general operations. So how does Tip of the Mitt become such a powerhouse? How does Tip of the Mitt become so well respected, and not just here at home, but all across Michigan and around the country? Well, my dad was always fond of saying that it takes a straw to stir the drink. And that's no more true than at Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. Gail Gruenwald has stirred the drink at Tip of the Mitt for nearly 4 decades. And her passionate and committed and innovative and exemplary leadership made all the difference in the world for the council, for organizations around her like ours, and for folks like me who have leaned on her for advice and guidance and counsel through the years. So Gail, as you approach the twilight of your career at Tip of the Mitt and you contemplate the next phase of your journey, I want you to know how much I admire not just the job you've done, but especially the manner in which you've done that job. Talented and professional and compassionate and direct when necessary, and always, always thoughtful and well-intentioned. And not only that, you're also really friendly and really fun to be around. So Gail, it's been my honor to be in a position to work alongside you for the past 11 years. And I wish you the very best of transitions at the Watershed Council and all the very best that retirement has to offer. Cheers to you.
Thank you, Chip. So Gail in 1990 interviewed a young man with a rather eclectic background. He was a football cheerleader at Michigan, a taxidermist. The food he ate, he tended to shoot himself. He was exuberant, but he tended to talk a lot. He said he'd heard about this awesome person and wanted to learn more about the organization she was running. Gail was impressed, but not enough because she didn't hire him. My, how history would have changed had she not relented and in fact did hire Gail or Will Schweikel. Will, before having a midlife crisis and switching careers to become a school administrator, worked at the Tip of the Mitt program as policy director from 1990 to 2005. Will, you're on.
Hey, David, thank you so much for that, that great introduction. And it's so great to see all of the folks that are here to celebrate Gail and to participate in the Watershed Council's annual meeting. It's so wonderful to see you all. As many of you know, I'm now superintendent of schools over on Beaver Island. So greetings from the middle of Lake Michigan. So yeah, David mentioned that 31 years ago, Gail hired me. And so I'd really like to thank Gail for hiring me, because you definitely did change my life. But let me give you a little bit of a background there. I found out about Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council while I was working on a master's project along the lines of what Grenetta had worked with some U of M students. And our job was to research and recommend the establishment of a watershed organization for Grand Traverse Bay. So one of my fellow researchers went to Harbor Springs to interview Gail for the project. When she came back to Ann Arbor, she raved about this amazing woman who was the director of the Watershed Council, and how the Watershed Council was the perfect model for the organization that we envisioned in Traverse City. When she came back, she said, "Oh my God, Will, you have to meet Gail. You will love her." Well, how right she was. As many of you know, and this is sort of irrelevant to the story, but Gail and I have been married now for 29 years. So thank you, Gail, for hiring me, and the rest, I guess, is history. So but let me go back to that interview. So after the interview, I drove back to Ann Arbor, and I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, if I don't get that job, I really don't want to work anywhere else on the planet. I guess I will just go back up to Alaska, where I had spent summers and spend the rest of my life fishing. So again, Gail, thank you for hiring me, because otherwise I'd probably still be living under a log on Kodiak Island. Hang on a sec. Oh, David just texted me saying I only have 5 minutes. So David, is that the 5 minutes start from when you introduced me, or 5 minutes from now? Anyway, let me get to this. So all of you have been sharing the great accolades of Gail. And as someone who has transitioned to a different career, one of the things I really want to focus on is Gail's leadership and the lessons that she's taught me working with her over the years. And this came up the other day. I was being interviewed by a colleague who's researching educational leaders and the development of educational leaders. And my response was, well, everything I know about leadership, I learned from Gail Gruenwald while working at the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. And so a lot of the previous speakers have already identified those areas. So I won't get into too much detail, but just list some of the things that stick with me. Courage. It takes a lot of courage to be an advocate. Integrity. That premise of Gail's and the Watershed Council's sound science and sound policy is so important to leadership. Commitment to the organization, commitment to social change, commitment to justice. Vision, hiring good people and then supporting them. Selfless collaboration, as Chip and DJ have mentioned, and humility. Always remembering that it's not about you, it's about the mission of the organization. So to give one example, and I could give dozens, but to give one example of how these were put into practice while I worked at the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council, let me share with you a story that comes from my first year, the first year that I was there. So I was preparing to give testimony at a hearing for a large development on the grounds of what eventually became Bay Harbor. The developer at the time, this predated David Johnson and Victor International. He proposed to move all of the cement kiln dust into the quarry at the west end of the property. Now you can imagine the impacts to water quality that would come from that. Not only while transporting and moving all these millions of cubic yards of cement kiln dust, but also the long-term effect on the groundwater flowing from the edge of the quarry through that out into the Lake Michigan. So a few hours before the hearing, as I was finishing my research and getting my bullet points down for what I was to present at this hearing, the developer called me from his attorney's office. The purpose of this call was clearly to intimidate me by threatening a lawsuit against the Watershed Council, personally threatening a lawsuit against me, and also basically threatening to contact all of the members that they knew and tell them not to donate to the Watershed Council. So, I was a young kid fresh out of grad school here. So I went into Gail's office a bit shaken and told her about the phone call I just had. So how she responded sticks with me as an example of her leadership. She first asked if I was okay. And, I was a little shaken. I'd never been, called by an attorney and threatened with a lawsuit for doing my job. But she asked if I was okay. And then she asked if I was prepared. Like, okay, have you done your research? Do you know what you're talking about? Are you going to be able to represent the water resources of Northern Michigan and represent our members well to the best of your ability? Is your stuff based on sound science and sound policy? Now, having worked with her for a year by this time, I knew that it had better. And so, of course, it was. And then she said, this isn't about you. This is about the water quality of the Great Lakes. You owe it to the resource and to all the Watershed Council members to go to this hearing and testify. I know you can do this. And so, as always, as Jennifer, as Jen Buchanan said, Gail's right. So she was right on all fronts. And as we know, Gail's always right. But I thought that was just one example of of how Gail's leadership that everyone's been talking about was really revealed in a 5-minute conversation. So with that, I want to again thank Gail for hiring me. Thank the Watershed Council for being an amazing organization. The time that I worked there, of course, I'm still a member and a huge supporter, but the time that I worked there, I really felt like I was serving Northern Michigan's water resources. As well, the last 15 years, I've really been able to savor the Northern Michigan's water resources by getting out and boating, fishing, kayaking, walking, everything else. So I want to say thank you, Gail, and thank you, Watershed Council. And Gail, now that you've retired, or now that you're going to soon retire, we'll be able to spend a lot more time together savoring all of these resources that you've worked so long to protect. With that, thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Will. That was, yes, it was, you clocked in at 5. That was perfect. We're down to just the last couple. Always save the best for last, right? Not really. We've had great testimonials today. Jennifer Mckay has been with the Watershed Council for over 16 years as policy director. She has received several appointments by 2 different governors to various Great Lakes issues as well as committees. And she serves on many boards and committees dedicated to preserving and protecting the Great Lakes. I've known and worked with Jennifer for many years. People that know her as a tenacious advocate for water protection, who does her research and is correct with the facts. So that's what Will was just talking about. So I'll turn it over to you, Jennifer, as we complete our program this morning.
Thank you, David. Am I working? Am I on video?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
We can see you.
Perfect. So Will's story, it's amazing. Poor Gail just got the same phone call, text from me, not just 2 weeks ago, saying I got threatened by an attorney regarding another case. So some things don't change for poor Gail at the Watershed Council. And I reached out to her and said, what do I do? I made the decisions and comments based upon sound science, but I'm looking to you for that advice. So it's amazing after all of these years, some things don't change for Gail. So what I want to talk about is, for more than nearly 38 years after accepting the job as staff attorney, Gail has helped create a well-watered machine of advocacy, policy, educational outreach, and scientific research. And she's done this all while inspiring a cadre of hundreds of volunteers, thousands of members, all to pitch in with their time and money to support the mission. And when Gail took the helm of executive director in 1987, the Watershed Council started to grow. And this is not only in budget and staffing and programs, but in recognition. And so under her leadership, the Watershed Council is now recognized as a leading organization for the protection of wetlands and water resources, not only locally, but in Lansing and Washington, D.C. And so as a result, we have some key individuals from Washington and Lansing that have very special messages and accolades for Gail for her dedication and service to the Watershed Council and protecting what we love. So I will be sharing my screen. Stuck in the way. And so for our first message. Our first message is we began in Washington, D.C. And we have a special message from the United States Senator, Gary Peters. Oh. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Let me start over. Let's try this one more time.
To celebrate you, Gail, and your 38 distinguished years serving our state and protecting our water resources. For decades, the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council has played a critical role in protecting the Great Lakes and waterways here in Michigan. And you have been the key to that success. With you at the helm, the council has led the charge on restoring our shorelines, educating the next generation of Michiganders on watershed conservation, and paving the way to a green infrastructure future. Gail, your leadership, your career, and service to the state of Michigan are an inspiration to all of us. Thank you again for your dedication and accomplishments that have made our state a better place to live for all Michiganders. I wish you all the best as you enter this next chapter in your life.
Next, we have Congressman Jeff Bergman has awarded Gail with a certificate of special congressional recognition in honor of her retirement for her outstanding service as the executive director of Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council for her 37 years of service. And Gail, I have all these certificates and I'll get them to you. And Grenetta, I have one for you too, so don't worry. Now, let us hear from Senator Debbie Stabenow.
Hello to everyone taking part in the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council's annual meeting. And a special thanks to Grenetta Thomassey, who will be retiring this year. Thank you for your work to protect Michigan's waters. Now, just for a moment, let's think back to 1984. You can do it. A couple of top songs that year included What's Love Got to Do With It by Tina Turner and Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen. The top movie that year was Back to the Future, and a movie ticket cost around $3.25. The first cell phone came on the market. The Motorola Dynatac took 10 hours to charge the battery and 30 minutes to drain the battery. And Lear Thomassey, a smart, passionate young attorney, first joined the team at Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. A few things have changed since then. We're all a little bit older, and Gail became executive director. However, some things haven't changed at all. Gail, you're still just as passionate about protecting our Great Lakes as you were on the very first day on the job 37 years ago. It's been my pleasure to work with you and your team over the years to obtain funding to protect and restore our waters, including through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And your work to develop a permanent endowment fund for Little Traverse Bay at the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation is a wonderful example of the power of public-private partnerships. So Gail, thank you. Thank you for your friendship, your leadership, and your career dedicated to protecting Michigan's waters and our way of life. Enjoy the rest of the celebration and your retirement. You've earned it.
And now we move to Lansing, where we have a very special tribute from the governor and lieutenant governor. And it is, I'm going to read it because it's very special. So it says, "Let it be known that it is our distinct honor to recognize Gail Gruenwald upon her retirement from the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council, where she has dedicated nearly 38 years of insight and leadership to protecting the watersheds, rivers, streams, and lakes of Antrim, Charlevoix, Sheboygan, and Emmett counties. Over the course of her career, Gail has inspired many as a trailblazer and a fearless advocate for water resource conservation in northern Michigan, and the positive impacts of her work will be felt by Michiganders for generations to come. Gail joined the Watershed Council shortly after it was founded in 1979 and has served as its executive director for the past 35 years. A dynamic professional, Gail has also utilized her legal education to contribute to a unique perspective to the Watershed Council's policy and advocacy efforts as the nonprofit staff attorney. During her tenure, she has mobilized hundreds of volunteers, built a network of 2,500 members, and has overseen growth in programs and services the Watershed Council provides. Gail's passion for the mission is clear, and under her leadership, the Watershed Council has made incredible progress in northern Michigan's water conservation efforts by conducting detailed research, crafting and distributing educational materials, inspiring youth interest in protecting their waters, supporting restoration projects, and advocating for environmental policies at different levels of government. As she enters retirement, Gail leaves behind a legacy of excellence and relentless determination to make a difference. Throughout her career, she has exemplified what it means to be a public servant and fight for change. She has served on numerous boards for environmental groups and has advocated for change at the local, state, and national levels, even testifying before the United States Senate. Gail is not only an imaginative leader, but also the author of Michigan's first guidebook for wetland protection. These are just some of her many accomplishments, and her contributions to water resource conservation cannot be overstated. Michiganders share a deep appreciation for this state's beautiful waters, and we are appreciative of all that Gail has done to preserve them. In special tribute, therefore, this document is signed and dedicated to Gail Gruenwald as a symbol of our gratitude for her career and contributions to protecting Michigan's water resources. On behalf of the people of Michigan, we extend the state's best wishes upon her retirement. Signed, Garland Gilchrist II, Lieutenant Governor, and Gretchen Whitmer, the Governor. And now we move forward with a special congratulatory message from our state senator, Wayne Schmidt.
Hello, Gail. Wayne Schmidt here, and I just want to say congratulations on 37 great years as executive director for Tip of the Mitt Watershed. You've done amazing things as the executive director. You're going to be missed here in northern Michigan. All of the great work you've done, that first wetlands plan that you did for Michigan, the fact that you started the Little Traverse Bay Fund that continues to help support clean water here through northern Michigan, and the fact that you've taken the watershed into not just a small group of people in northern Michigan caring about water quality and wetlands, but rather a nationally recognized organization, 2,500 members. You've made a significant impact on the quality of life up north here. And I just want to say, sorry that I can't be there, but again, congratulations on 37 great years. You're going to be missed. It's going to be a well-deserved retirement. However, I'm sure we're going to see you around doing a few other things. So again, great job, Gail. Way to go.
And last but not least, I would like to do a special introduction to State Representative Sue Aller, who is actually with us today to say a few words. Representative Aller represents District 106, which serves Alpena, Presque, Alcona, and Iosco counties, as well as part of Sheboygan County. So, Representative Aller, I turn the floor over to you.
Okay. I was going to say good morning, but I guess we're going into the afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this. It's definitely a momentous occasion. I'd like to just read a few words that I've prepared for this day. To start with, I'm a resident in Sheboygan County, so I'm very familiar with the work of Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. Living in northern Michigan, surrounded by the beauty of our forests, wildlife, rivers, streams, and lakes, is a privilege that cannot be taken for granted. As my husband so often comments, we live in vacation land. And when I stop to think about his comment, it's so very true. We live in an area that is absolutely gorgeous and abundant with natural resources that so very many people long for. It is this basic concept that I imagine was one of Gail Gruenwald's motivators when she was first hired in 1984. And most likely, it continued to be one of her motivators throughout her subsequent years. Her focus on our environment is evident through the many activities and programs she has been involved with. She has testified before the United States Senate, state legislative bodies, and spoke to many local units of government on the importance of wetland protection. Additionally, she has worked hand in hand with lake groups on invasive species eradication and has always been focused on protecting our natural resources. Gail has been actively involved for all but 5 of the 42 years the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council has been in existence. She has seen it grow from a small group of lake associations to a group having over 2,500 members, numerous volunteers, and 11 staff members. Her focus on advocacy, policy, educational outreach, and scientific research has motivated and empowered these people to focus their energies on protecting the watersheds and the water resources we all want to enjoy. And in return, these resources are providing abundance to the communities within Antrim, Emmett, Charlevoix, and Sheboygan counties. Gail was also actively involved in the development of the Little Traverse Bay Fund, a permanent endowment at the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation that is focused on the protection and enhancement of Little Traverse Bay. Overall, her perspective on water issues, water policy, and water resource protection, her desire to protect our natural resources, to create good policy, and to lead the staff of Tip of the Mitt, and to communicate with community members as to the importance of our natural resources, has left an indelible mark on Northern Michigan and will positively impact generations to come. Gail has truly walked the walk and talked the talk of the Tip of the Mitt's mission statement, which states in part, we are dedicated to protecting our lakes, streams, wetlands, and groundwater through respected advocacy, innovative education, technically sound water quality monitoring, thorough research, and restoration actions. So to sum it up, Gail, thank you so very much for your ongoing efforts to protect our environment. And I'll take a bit of liberty here. Thank you from my grandchildren and the many other generations to come who will forever appreciate your focus on maintaining and enhancing our waters and the tremendous beauty found in northern Michigan, our vacation land. Thank you and best of luck.
Thank you, Senator Aller. Wonderfully done. And thank you all as well. We have those that have maintained in here. And Senator Aller, you can click off your video if you don't mind. For those of you that have hung in here, the many tributes we've had, believe me, there were many that we could not include as well. But we're going to finish with the last two, and most important, obviously, to Will and Gail, their daughters. As Will said, they are both committed to making the world a better place, following in their mother's footsteps. Kate Schweikel joined the Watershed Council in 2015. She now works remotely from Boise, Idaho, with both the development and communication teams at the Watershed Council. Sadie has completed her bachelor's and master's degree in Earth Systems from Stanford University and hopes to continue her passion for protecting water resources in her career. She currently is working at the Stanford Sierra Camp near Lake Tahoe in California. And her tribute will be by video because she has horrible internet connections. So this is the safest way. So Kate, you are on.
Thank you, David. That is very kind of you. Hello, everyone. I'm Kate, Gail's eldest daughter. As David mentioned, I've worked here at the Watershed Council for about the last 6 years, and I feel so grateful to not only work for an incredible environmental organization protecting the waters that I personally love, but to also have worked for an incredible woman such as Gail, although I realize I'm probably a little bit biased. My love and appreciation for the environment and our water resources here in northern Michigan began long before I started working at the Watershed Council. Growing up in Harbor Springs and with Gail and Will as my parents, being an environmentalist was always kind of a given. Some of my very first memories are camping along the lake, swimming and boating in Lake Michigan, and attending the long-standing Watershed Council's Lake Expo event, which I'm sure some of you also remember fondly. I always thought I was so cool after that event wearing my newest fish print t-shirt, thanks to Doug and Will. I am thankful to have grown up in and out of the office, learning about the importance of protecting our waters and being good stewards for future generations. I'm thankful to you, Mom, for teaching me that our natural resources are worth protecting and that no summer day is complete without a swim in the lake, no matter how cold it is. It's hard to imagine a Watershed Council without you in charge, but I know you've set the organization up for many, many years of future success. Thank you for being the best mom and boss, and I'm so proud of everything that you have accomplished in your amazing career. Unfortunately, as David mentioned, Sadie cannot be on the call today due to some poor internet reception, but I don't feel too bad for her because she is hanging out at Lake Tahoe all summer after all. But she was able to send in a short video that I will play now.
Hi Mom, congratulations on your retirement. I love you so much and I'm so sad that I can't be there to celebrate with you. I'm so proud to be your daughter and I can't believe all the hard work and all of the long years that you've put into making northern Michigan a beautiful and healthy place for everyone to live in, and for all of the beautiful lakes and rivers and streams that I was so lucky to grow up enjoying. You inspire me so much to work really hard with so much compassion and love to protect the world around us, and I am so thankful for all of the knowledge and wisdom that you've instilled in me and Kate from a young age. Choices that I've made in terms of what I'm studying and what I want to do in my career in the future is very much inspired by you and your work and the values that you taught me growing up, and I am so grateful for you. I love you so much. Congrats again on your retirement, and I can't wait to see you soon. Thanks, Mom.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Sadie. A wonderful way to end. And it's really up to you now, Gail, after hearing all of this, to any of the comments that you would like to make now as well. I think we have shared everything there is to be said about you just for today. Now, if we were meeting tomorrow, be a whole new, all of the new accolades would be coming tomorrow that we didn't share today. So I turn it over to you now, Gail.
Wow, you guys. Well, that was really a special tribute, and thank you for everyone who participated. I particularly want to thank those that I know went above and beyond the call of duty. Jennifer Mckay must have tracked down all of those tributes from Washington and Lansing, and Jen DeMoss coordinated all of your fabulous participation. I appreciate that. Jen Buchanan with the video. David Krauss, when I heard you were moderating, I assumed it would be fun and enjoyable. And then Will Schweikel, Kate and Sadie, that's just great to have your thoughts too. So I really, really appreciate it. I took notes, as you might all suspect. There's a couple of you I'm going to get back with. Doug, I don't recall the sheriff pulling us over. And a few other things that I thought were kind of interesting too. The pics of all my hair over time. Thanks a bunch, Jen Buchanan. So I really will contact all of you. I appreciate so much all of your tributes. I know the Watershed Council is in good hands. Obviously, you know this staff is fabulous. It's not now, nor was it ever all about me. And so because my management style, people had commented was selfless and autonomous and some of those things. I also just trusted all of you to get the work done, and I still do. I trust the board. I trust the staff. I trust the members to keep giving and supporting. I'll be in the background as a member. I get to come to the next annual meeting without having to do anything. Not that I had to do much for this one, but in any case, I'll be there. I'll continue to participate and support the organization as best I can. So thank you to all of you who put so much time and energy into this. I so appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. We're going to have some parties later in the year, so we'll be able to see you in person, give those hugs that DJ wants, and hope to see all of you soon. Thank you.
I think that's the end of the meeting. And how we always ended it. What do we do? Sing "God Bless America," or how do you like to end?
You can sing anything you want. No, we just this was not a business meeting. There's no adjourning. There's no nothing. We can just all wave goodbye and pledge to see each other sometime soon. Oh, Art Gold's popping in. Chip Hanson. Yay, everybody, come on board. Thank you again, everybody. I really appreciate it.